And we're on. Welcome back to on the next episode of In the Future, where we're going to have a topic today where we're talking about the why the space race has returned to us today in the 2020s.
2020s is an interesting way to phrase the current year that we live in. Okay, so the question that we have written down. So why has the space race returned? What and then I to dive in a little bit deeper, what outcome are we looking for as countries, as humanity? Let's unpack it. What's your take on it? Why has the space race come back into vogue?
Yeah. So I think number one is economic competition is the first one that comes to mind. I think thinking about all the resources that we have on Earth, obviously we're still mining the Earth. We're full of full of still rich soil with different raw materials that can help us create our iPhones, our cell phones, our laptops, our cars. However, there's also a bit of the backlash of that impact on the environment. That's one, but also it just if you think about the moon, the asteroids that are flying around, Mars, probably part of the reason why we're investing in Mars is in getting to Mars too, is that we have an abundance of raw materials in those locations, right? It's just no, but they're untouched. So you can imagine it. This is like the 21st century gold rush, or we're finding new oil. If we whoever can get there first can really start to change the power play that we have here on Earth. So driving those, we've seen that India recently launched their own rocket, and while I consider India to be a powerhouse in the economies, it's not really like a threat to overtake America or anything like that, or any of the first world countries, or even China at this point. However, if a country like India can get to the moon, the south side of the moon, I think that's what they landed on recently. Um, it could really shift the geopolitical rivalry of the whole planet, right? Especially their competition with China, and really just give them the resources to completely transform their country. So I can understand why we're doing it. Some people are like, well, we have problems on Earth, but there is an economical payoff to investing in the space race. What do you think?
Interesting. So your angle is purely around raw materials, natural resources, and the fact that there is an abundance of them potentially on these planets far, far away,
Yeah,
and we've mined a significant amount of what we're ever going to mine here on Earth.
exactly. It's almost infinite. I mean, theoretically, it's infinite out in space, and not everybody has access to it. So it's still scarce to those who don't have the technology to reach it.
Hmm. I Okay. Let's explore this one. So, do you think that these countries who will travel to these planets, who will set up the equipment, set up the base to mine for resources, do you see it being cooperative or purely competition? The country that lays claim to that planet or that asteroid, that's theirs and they won't give it up? Or you think it'll be more of a, hey guys, global planet, this is our second opportunity. We clearly squandered the first one. Let's be a little bit more collaborative in this one,
Okay.
and not mine it to death.
Right. I'm trying to think here. I think that is a great question. Um, I think there are aspect. There's always been an aspect of collaborativeness when it comes to space, right? We've got the International Space Station, where you have Russian, regardless of what's going on Earth, right? You've got Russians and American scientists working all together. I think there will still be an element to that, right, of collaboration. Number one, sharing costs. I think to get to these places, sharing technology, sharing knowledge, and of course promoting space exploration. I think that's the collaborative piece that countries will have. So I don't think it's black and white whether it'll be more collaborative or more competitive. So there's the collaboration aspects, but I do think that the competitive part might be actually driving innovation from those raw materials, those rare materials. Actually, placing their flags in these places, like, oh, we got here first. Um, and I think I would imagine that we just can't, countries can't do it alone. I mean, maybe the U.S. can, maybe like China can, but I don't think. I think that there is acknowledged benefit to collaborating together. Like we've got programs like I mentioned the International Space Station, but we also have the Artemis program, um, which is to get people back to the moon in 2025. That's an example of a collaborative effort. But again, I think commercialization of the raw materials is really the thing that's going to drive the competitive. So my short answer is it's going to be a mix of the two. What do you think?
I think it's funny that you think that was a short answer. Okay, so it's interesting that you mentioned the moon. Um, I I wonder why it has been. So the last time we were at the moon, we were on the moon, was 1973,
Hmm.
which was 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Why so long since we have been on that planet? Is it just that we haven't found another reason to go back and spend the resources and all the expenses to go back there? Which then leads me to the question of why are we going back? Are there resources that we want to mine there? But it is the larger question in my mind is, when Kennedy made that mission, right, for the United States of, hey, in the next 10 years, let's get us to the moon.
Yeah.
That really triggered something in Americans, and as a consequence in the world, right? That's what
Hmm.
led to the space race. Um, I wonder if that's just what we're coming back to now. If our generation is re-experiencing what that generation did, right? Where it's just, it's like one country starts going, then another starts going, and it just creates this race
Yeah.
where the citizens of those countries are starting to question their leadership. Like, well, why aren't we going to space? And that kind of adds more and more fuel. Um, but I'll take your angle of we're just going there for raw materials, natural resources, and I'll give you my different angle on it.
Hmm.
I think that the reason it has become that the space race has become so popular is purely from a survival standpoint.
Okay.
And I'll break that down into two very distinct avenues. Number one is if you look at history, there has been a catastrophic event that has wiped out a big chunk of the planet historically, right? An asteroid could hit us at any time. Ice age has happened, things like that.
Hmm.
So if you just think about it, if it has happened before, and there's no reason not to believe that it won't happen at some point again in the future.
Yeah.
Which means that as a result, okay, we have spent all of these years, many generations, building up this planet, really trying to evolve humanity, build ourselves out. So why would we not protect ourselves, right? Why would you not have that insurance policy?
Yeah.
And so I view this space race really just as an understanding of all of these countries saying, hey, we have to look out for ourselves just as human beings. If we do not become a multi-planetary species, then we have this major risk, right? It's what do they call it in a single point of failure,
Hmm.
right? And if that asteroid comes and hits us, that is the single point of failure where
Hmm.
we will just dissolve as a species. The So that's one. The other one, that's the other avenue under survival is, um, if you look at how the global population of just people, right, it's continuing to rise year, and it's not going to stop. There's no reason to think that that would stop. And so, to your point about resources, are there enough resources on the planet Earth to sustain the continuing growth of humanity? Like, yes, people can say that there are declining birth rates, but net, if you look at it and you kind of project the trajectory, um, can this Earth continue to support a growing population? I think that's very tough. So purely survival, but it's two very different reasons. What's
Okay.
your take?
Yeah, interesting. So I'd say the first one makes absolute sense to me. I think I agree. I think the survival, like I think that falls into the collaborative bucket that you had mentioned, where it's like, hey, we need some technological advancement, and we need to do this together as a human species in order to survive any catastrophic event that may happen, like a comet, um, or who knows, right? Like just maybe the planet loses oxygen because of heating, and carbon dioxide goes up. I agree with there. I think the second one where you mentioned survival, yeah, so I agree with some aspects of it. I agree with the aspect of the I think that getting those resources out, reaching out of the earth, we need those in order to continue the consumerism that we've got at our scale. So I think to continue to create computers and the everyday technology that we have, phones, cell phones, all those things really need those rare materials to be created. So I agree, without continuing to do so, we won't advance our technological capabilities and what we have in our household. A lot of it has to do with leveraging a lot of those rare materials that we found in the past. I will say from a population perspective, though it might be a different topic, there is a lot of population collapse happening across many countries. Europe, China, India is the opposite. It's growing. Africa as a continent is growing. I think the U.S. is going to flatten out, but we're still growing. Russia is definitely in a population collapse, absolutely. So there, I feel like, and I think I've seen some. I have to do some research, but I think there is like the Earth is going to flatten out its population though, and I think in like 50 years, or its population growth will start to look pretty flat as overall across every country. So I think, I don't know if there's a concern. I mean, there could be the perception that you might be right. There's still very much a popular perception that we're overpopulating, we're growing very fast, and there's not enough room for people to consume things. However, I think there's some truth to like not that the Earth population may flatten out, and we may actually have enough room and resources to last for a while, if we don't destroy and poison it. Though that's a different story. Though if we don't, we can easily screw ourselves with the way we're doing things today. Again, I'm no scientist, so you may not believe in that stuff.
Do you like space? Are you interested in space?
Yeah. Actually, I like space a lot. I think space. I got really curious. I don't remember what age was it. I got obsessed with space when I was like 7 or 6. Yeah, I think it was like books or I think I went to a book fair, and I think I got like little telescopes, and that was like one of the first time. I think I went from books to weather, but space to weather. Space was one of my first like topics. I was like, oh, I love this. This is so great because it makes you feel so small, and it makes you take everything less serious in some ways, because you're like, we're just floating on a giant rock through infinite space. Who cares about the bad things?
It's funny, you got the bug when you were younger. I really got interested in it in the last maybe 2 or 3 years. I definitely went down a rabbit hole when I saw someone gifted me a master class, and one of the long series was I can't remember who the guy was, but he's the one who was in space, very popular on social media. He was playing the guitar. I can't remember, is it Scott something maybe? I don't know.
Okay.
But it was just very interesting the way he was explaining it, like all the different parts, just like what does the equipment consist of? What is the atmosphere? What is that change from planet Earth through the different layers?
Mm-hmm.
And then what really stuck with me, and I think this will be one of the really important benefits of space tourism, is sort of what you said. It's the appreciation of looking down at this small blue marble called Earth,
Mm-hmm.
and really realizing just how small we are by comparison. But more importantly, when you look at Earth from space, what do you not see? You don't see borders. You don't see different races. Everyone looks exactly the same, right? It's all very connected in this big globe. And I think that's very cool. And that's why if you interview any of the space, what are they called? Astronauts. Sounds like space people. If you interview any of the astronauts who have been out there and have come back, they have such a deep deep appreciation for Earth
Yeah.
because they were just able to see it, and like almost brought them to tears. Like even when they
Hmm.
just recall that moment when they first saw it from that angle. So I
Yeah.
think that tourism is going to lead to, obviously it's until it becomes very affordable for the masses, if it ever will. For the people who do get to experience it, I think they'll come back with some knowledge that hopefully they can instill in others in a positive way.
Yeah, you just gave me like an interesting vision, but before I go to that, um, yeah. But by the way, the effect is the overview effect, the one where you go out
Hmm.
into space and you're just like, I think yeah, I think most astronauts yeah feel that sense of interconnectedness, appreciation for Earth, right? Awe and wonder, and also a little lonely because I think you look at the Earth and you're like, it's just a black abyss. Like you know that the moment you move away from this blue marble, you're not gonna, as far as we know, there's nothing like us anywhere near it. It's almost like being in a desert and just looking the other way and being like, whoa, there's just nothing for me out there. I mean, not you might want to explore it. It's interesting, but just it's just complete darkness. But you had me thinking when you said space tourism, and obviously space tourism as we envision it today is very interesting. It's just like we go into space, we look at the Earth, and we come down. I pictured a little bit of like a Jetson esque vision for a moment, where I'm like, okay, where can that vision go next? And I'm not saying it's a positive one, and I'm not saying we should have this be what space tourism ultimately becomes. But do we ultimately create like space cruises, like big ships or satellites that are just floating above Earth? It's very sci-fi. I think we've seen this in cartoons before, like where you fly up into a space hotel and you're just like, oh yeah, we're gonna stay at the space lounge. They've got like massages and like zero gravity saunas. Yeah, I'm gonna go this weekend. Are you gonna come with? You know, like just picture like an Earth with like neon signs, satellites and neon signs around it, little islands that people can go to for commercial reasons. And I imagine it wouldn't be like the Wild Wild West because you need to have some sort of money to invest to create these. It's not like somebody who's like from a desert tribe is gonna make a rocket and go to these places and rob you like space pirates. I don't think that's gonna happen. I think it'd be like this. Although that's interesting, that could be the far future. But in this case, I imagine some sort of big corporation would create these type of hotel experiences. These, and then of course with that money comes security and ensuring that the law is followed in space the same way we do with international waters.
Yeah, governance and all of that, just like the rules, the laws of all of those people, that who gets to decide those,
Yeah,
right? You know, the whole process of electing those people is going to be interesting. By the way, for anybody who's interested, Chris Hadfield is the one who
Hatfield, Chris
taught
Hatfield.
taught the masterclass.
Yeah,
Wonderful masterclass. I loved it.
yeah.
Um, what are we? What's another one? So, and another, you sort of hit on this. We don't currently know of any other species out there, but
Mhm.
if you just look at our solar system and then you expand a little bit and look, or our galaxy, sorry, our
Mhm.
galaxy, and then you expand a little bit and you kind of look at what else is out there, right? The broader, how many galaxies are there? There's so many, and we have really gotten to for the first time see them in a little bit more clarity with, was it the Hubble telescope, or what was the telescope that just went out recently? Um, anyway,
Not the Hubbard. It's called the. You're right, I'm trying to remember what is it called. It just went up like last year.
James Webb, that's what it's called.
Yeah, yeah, James Webb Telescope. That's right,
James
James
Webb
Webb
Telescope.
Telescope.
And the purpose of the James Webb Telescope was to try to find the earliest uh, light, right, from when the Big Bang happened.
Yeah,
That light that was emitted at that moment, it takes so long for us to reach us,
yeah,
we're not going to see it. So this satellite just keeps going farther and farther into space, trying to just collect any glimpse of light that it can, which is really cool. And so if you follow that logic, right, that this thing was able to show us just all of these crazy amount of galaxies, like a number that just blows your mind that we have never thought about before.
yeah.
what rational person can say Earth is the one planet that was able to support life after the Big Bang happened, and none of these other places were able are capable of doing that? That's insane, right?
I
So,
yeah, yeah. Go ahead, go ahead. No, you're right. You're right. And it's something that's always been such a major just such a major question mark, right? It's like maybe life as we know it on these other planets, they might just be too far. Number one, right? So we don't know. Like it's just not even like we can't even reach them. But there are a couple theories of out there of like why are we the only ones so far? Like one of them is that we're early, like we're the early life, like we're some of the first to ever come out, right? We're still in the baby age. We're like the universe is still young enough that we're some of the first life that's evolved to this point. I'm not saying I believe that theory, but that's one. The other theory is the fact that there have been other civilizations, but they've been destroyed and they live far away. Um, and if you think about like even our history, like right, like this one might be pushing it quite a stretch, but there before written history that we know of, there could have been societies here that were fully developed, right? Again, it's a stretch. I'm not saying it's hard. It's just hard to prove, right? We've got pyramids. You don't have any text that can prove otherwise. Like if if we blew this planet up with like nukes, or we were just a couple of tribes on Earth that were pretty technologically advanced, we wipe each other out and burn our history books, we would just never exist. You would never know. Again, a stretch. The other one, I think it was like we some civilizations are aware of us, but they don't bother us because they're just too they're just too intelligent to get involved with us. We're not. They know that getting engaged with us will either cause a conflict or something like that, or just it's kind of like the metaphor that was used was like when you're driving down the highway and there's an anthill on the side of the road. What is that anthill to you? It's nothing.
nothing. Yeah.
Yeah, you drove, but that anthill has a whole. It's got a whole civilization of ants in it, like millions of ants, and you're just a car driving on the highway. So that was the equivalent. So it's hard to kind of even picture that size of scale, but they say like whatever other life forms might see as as an anthill. Like, oh yeah, whatever. Like I don't care about that. I'm moving on. But again, we don't know, man. It's crazy. But I agree with you. I would like to believe. Here's personal opinion. I would like to believe. Not saying that I believe this as a fact. I would hope that we're not alone. I hope there is civilization somewhere out there that's just even if it's just like we just can't reach them because of the distance. We're just too damn far. They can't reach us, and we can't reach them. It just feels too like the fact that we had the perfect scenario here in our galaxy on our Earth just feels like I don't know. That's like icky story to me.
It's also just kind of improbable, right? Like,
Improbable, yeah. It's
the
totally.
point that I was making. Like like if anyone was a betting man, like it's really hard to bet on the other story,
Yeah.
right? That in all of these abundance of galaxies that are out there. Let me just look up how many galaxies. How many galaxies are there?
Well, did you as you do that? Have you heard the theory of like that life was sent over from another planet?
No.
Okay.
I mean sent over. Sorry. Before you get into that,
Yeah.
guess when I Google how many galaxies are there? Guess what the number is from Wikipedia?
Like 50 trillion.
No, that's a little high, but still, it's such a huge number,
Yeah.
right? So space.com, how many galaxies are there? All in all,
Yeah.
Hubble reveals an estimated 100 billion galaxies in the universe or so. But this number is likely to increase to about 200 billion. That's what Wikipedia was saying too, 200 billion.
Yeah. Wow.
200 billion of
Billion.
these.
It's a lot. Yeah.
So like the chances that it's only us is crazy, right?
Yeah. And not densely populated, by the way, from our perspective. From our perspective, zoom out as a large creature or being, they look pretty dense and close together, but it's not close at all.
Right.
from our
So,
lens.
so is it just a matter of that none of these galaxies and any life forms that are on them are able to figure out how to bridge the distance? They just can't figure out a spaceship that will do that. That's also kind of improbable, right?
Well, there's also the thought of like sizing, like relative size to what is a what are these beings like? Are these beings super tiny, or are they so large that we're basically bacteria? You know what I mean, to them under
Interesting.
the fingernail. So we can't. It's not like we can communicate anyway. Like that's so because we don't know what is the largest object in this universe and what is the smallest. Like it's all relative to us. You can't tell. There's no way. That I would really love to know that answer. Like, give me the largest. What is the largest thing apart from the universe itself? Imagine that we're the universe that we see from the James Webb Telescope or from what we know is only like a dot, like a 0.1% of the entire universe, which it probably honestly is. Like we haven't like it's not like we can say, oh yeah, we've got this universe and we've mapped 50% of it. Cool. It's no, it's like who knows? It's probably infinitely large, which is kind of a scary thought.
Yeah. What were you gonna say before? Like, have I heard about which theory?
Oh no, the
That it was
life was
sent to
created
us.
and transported to Earth. The reason is it sounds ridiculous, obviously, like a sci-fi movie, but it's if we were getting destroyed and we were saying and we were let's say we're a civilization and we knew the Earth was going to end and we needed to save humanity or just living beings as a whole. I mean, one of the ways we could save it is by putting a ton of capsules or whatever the transportation mode is and shooting it out to planets that are similar to ours. Like, for example, James Webb Telescope has found planets that are very similar to Earth. It's found like 40 of them, if anything, 50 of them. So imagine if we can, maybe we can't get there ourselves, but we're like, we need humanity to live on. Great. A human baby is not going to survive that. A fetus isn't going to survive that. What can survive that? A single celled organism can survive off minimal resources. Let's shoot it that way, and eventually it'll create another version of Earth, or at least something similar. So that's one of the theories that sounds, I know, ridiculous and far fetched, but it could be that a civilization was to the point where we were, and they were just like, hey, this is the only way. It'll take millions of years for it to get to our point, but at least it'll get there. So let's go ahead and just risk it. And that's where you get like the single cell amoeba, and then evolution through all those different animals, and eventually to us.
Yeah, I mean, everything sounds ridiculous until it doesn't,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
How much time we got? Let's see if we can dive into anything else, or we're at time.
We are at. We've got 3 minutes. We got 3 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, all right. So it's interesting that you said it sounds like sci-fi. What I find interesting about sci-fi is that the people who envision these things, right? Like they can think up a comic, like something as basic as that, and that has some kind of like science fiction, right? It's fiction at the moment, but eventually it becomes a TV show. It becomes something that people just discuss in a room such as this, and then over time, it actually gets developed, right? When the technology catches
Yeah.
up, those ideas are the ones that seemed crazy at the moment are the ones that are actually steering the future,
Yeah.
right? So I think I have an immense respect for people who can think of that science fiction stuff because they're the ones who actually shape the future and what people work on 10, 20, 50 years from now.
Yeah.
That's always been very cool.
It's
And
same.
yet they're the ones who people kind of brush off, right? It's like, oh, it's just people in a room, like what do they know? Playing Dungeons and Dragons. But
Yeah.
realistically,
Yeah.
very cool.
Power of media too. Power of media, because what happens is you've got little baby Elon Musk's or similar to him watching these sci-fi shows when they're kids, and then that totally inspires them to proceed to try to build these things in the future, and that becomes kind of like the what do you call it, the framework for what they're trying to create. So it's crazy, or it'll inspire new creations. So you're right. It's sci-fi. Sci-fi is huge, and it's the thing I like about sci-fi too. Really quickly, not to veer off too crazy. I like that sci-fi versus, and I like fantasy. Don't get me wrong, but sci-fi is grounded in potential reality. it could be a snippet into the future, and it just feels grounded. It's like, oh, that could be us soon.
Mm. Yeah. One of my favorite phrases is content shapes culture.
Yeah.
And it's very true in this case, right? Because somebody created that content and then eventually it shaped culture. I'll give you another example where that phrase is applicable because it's top of mind for me.
Yeah.
Um, what was that chess Netflix show?
The Queen's Gambit.
Queen's Gambit. So Queen's Gambit, nobody cared about chess in big, popular circles prior to that moment. But when that show took off, like really took off, the sales of chessboards and like anything chess related, chess rooms, chess like meetup, went through the roof. And that was such a prime example of just content, which is that show shaping culture. Everybody got obsessed with chess, and I think that topics like science fiction, topics that are sort of like in the talked about in the hidden rooms, if those become popular, imagine how that can shape culture. Like
Oh,
the things. Mhm.
100%. I mean, I think this touches on a topic that we had in one of our previous episodes about with TikTok.
Yeah,
So it goes both ways. It goes both ways.
maybe we'll re-record that episode since I don't think we published it.
I think you're right. I think we should. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. Anything else you wanna? Any last minute thoughts, or we're good here?
No, but I guess I would leave it with I hope people realize the importance of the space race that's happening now because it's going to shape the dynamics here on Earth. And while you use your cell phone to watch TikToks and Instagrams and scrolling, just realize that it's space and advanced technology that powers those things. And without your interest in that, those things will eventually go away if nobody's trying to drive towards achieving those types of space race type of visions that we have.
Yeah, and actually, just to add to that, one last thing. One of the obvious benefits that's going. Let's focus on the benefits of the space race is all of the satellites that are going up, right? So some of the satellites are okay. Some are going to be used for spying, but think about the ones that are going to enable internet access without cell towers, right? Or like the need for cell towers, right? So places that currently don't have internet, and like third world countries or developing countries, they don't have internet, and as a result, they're lacking in that education access. Think about how this this reignited interest in getting more and more internet satellites up into orbit, how that's going to enable all of these countries and all of the people in those countries to get access to education, and the consequences of that, the good consequences.
Yeah.
Right? That's going to enable all kinds of ideas from people that have really been kind of barred off from the developed world. So that's just going to be a whole new chapter of knowledge, of creativity. That's really what I'm excited about. I think it's going to be really cool.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. A lot and new perspectives too as they start to, and people who are just probably like you said in that scenario, just hungry with ideas to get them out there. So we'll see a lot of innovation coming from those places.
Very cool. That's
All right.
the pod.
That's the pod. All right.
Good stuff.
See you in the future.